and entrepreneur straight out of New York City, Michael Chernow. What's cracking?
As soon as you can after waking, you want to expose your eyes to bright light.
For how long?
Well, it's cumulative. So if you just go to the window and you open up your blinds and you just like look outside for 10, 20, 30 seconds, I mean, that is enough. That's enough to like wake you up.
And through the glass, it's all good?
Through the glass, it's all good.
Why did I hear that through the glass is no bueno? Like the glass deters the effect.
I think there's a lot of misinformation on social media with this, with topics that are as complex as this. But it's like, we know that our circadian rhythms can be perturbed by exposure to bright light from our devices, right? When they're like flush up against our faces and like big screen TVs and the like, and through like artificial lights, which come from light bulbs, which have to pass through the glass of the bulb, right? So for us to recognize that, but then not think that we're getting adequate light through our windows doesn't make any sense.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Creatures of Habit Podcast for another episode of fucking awesomeness. I've got a guest on the show that I've wanted to have on the show for a long time, Max Lugavere. You know him from his podcast, The Genius Life Podcast. Also, he is a New York Times bestselling author, The Genius Life book. Max has done so much. He has so much content and knowledge that he's going to share with us today. I've got so many questions because he interviews so many people about habits, hacks, tricks, tips. Like, he's got it all. He's literally talked to the best of the best in the world of better lifestyles. So, Max, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
The Creatures of Habit Podcast is really a show where I try to meet with people like you to talk about habits, rituals, routines, specifically in the morning, in the evening, and then a few things throughout the day that can help you stay focused, organized, on top of your shit.
Damn, I thought we were just going to be talking about oatmeal the whole time. I'm out.
See ya. So, I've been a big fan for a long time. We met, I think, in 2019. We were on a panel at Strong New York together.
That's right. You reminded me of that, and then I forgot. But yeah, that was and we have like a photo together too that I've shared on my Instagram.
We have a photo.
Yeah, numerous times. I love it.
So yeah, that's where we first met, and I've been a fan ever since. I love your show. I've read your book. I listen to your show all the time. I appreciate that shout out on the show where you talked about Meal One and your introduction to overnight oats.
Yes, dude. It's so funny because I'm like a 40-year-old guy who just discovered overnight oats for the first time thanks to you. So yeah, I mean it's been a wonderful journey thus far. I was turned on to Meal One by my good friend Brian Rubenstein, who's a rock star in like the CPG better for you product space, and he gave me a few packets to try, and I'd never made or tasted overnight oats. I was like, what's the difference between overnight and like just making them in the microwave, And I'm generally not even a big like oat person, or at least I wasn't at the time. And it's just like, it's like having dessert in the morning, but it's super healthy. It's got all these, healthy fats. You load it with protein. So it's like, you're taking out all the like the busy work in the kitchen, and it's like this really complete meal that just like tastes great, and texturally it's super fun. So yeah, thanks for making it.
And that's it, folks. Great episode. Thanks so much for joining the show. I think the oatmeal game is for people in the world of movement, right? For people in the world of activity, a lot of people use oatmeal.
Yeah.
It's an easy, somewhat satiating meal to have on the fly. The thing that I found out over the years in my oatmeal journeys, because I've been doing it for a long time, is that oatmeal alone, without a significant amount of protein and fat, is not really going to fill you up for an extended period of time. It's like it's not simple carbohydrates where your body just flies through it. It is more of a complex carbohydrate that does burn a little slower. However, carbohydrates alone in general are not going to be satiating, right?
Yeah.
They kind of like trigger the health, the hunger thing, and an hour later you want to eat more. So adding, really sort of filling out the macronutrient split with 30 grams of protein, 10 grams of fat, or 7 to 10 grams of fat, depending on the flavor, has really made for like a full, complete, satiating meal that keeps you full for a while.
Yeah, well, I mean, we also know that like people who eat protein as their break fast, their fast breaking meal of the day, tend to make healthier choices throughout the rest of the day because it just sets them up for more stable blood sugar. There's like a hormonal aspect to it. I think that probably sets people up for success. So yeah, I mean, like I would never start the day with like just pure carbs, but I'm generally like a morning workout person, and I, for a very long time, have enjoyed fasted workouts. But over the past year, probably, I've been experimenting with more like pre-workout carbs. And I'm generally not like a big grain guy. I don't really like think that they're the devil or anything like that, as they're often made to be, especially like in the paleo sphere. But like oats were just something that weren't really like on my radar. But I started like integrating these like pre-workout carbs, and I noticed that it would give me more energy like in the gym. I actually first started experimenting with them when I took up boxing. So about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I started taking up like private boxing lessons, and I would notice that when fasted, having a strength training workout for me fasted, totally fine. But boxing, I would bonk without like some carbs in my system.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so I started like the oats have been great.
So when you use them for a pre-workout meal, how long before training do you take them?
Generally like an hour, or like maybe less than that, like a half an hour. Yeah, because my morning routine, generally, I wake up, I have a cup of coffee, I'll wait like, an hour after I wake up to have my first meal. And then generally like after I eat that first meal and I get that out of the way, then I'll head to the gym. So by the time I'm actually like hitting the weights, it's probably like been like a half an hour to 45 minutes.
So intermittent fasting is not something that you do?
I try to practice like time restricted eating. So I try not to eat anything for the first hour or two of the morning, and then I generally will try not to eat for 2 to 3 hours before bed. I don't think that there's anything like magical per se about it, but I do track the research on like circadian biology. We're diurnal creatures, so I don't think that we're meant to eat super late at night. We have these internal time setters, the primary one being in our brain. We have a little structure in the hypothalamus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and it's very sensitive to light. So, getting light first thing in the morning when you wake up, super, super important.
So that I do a lot of shit in the morning. I don't make that a priority for myself. Can we talk about that one real quick?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be like bright, like like the LA sun, like pouring into your windows. Even on an overcast day, there's enough light in terms of like lux, light intensity, coming through the cloud cover that basically like anchors it sets off a 24-hour timer that we've co-evolved with light over millennia. And so we have these cells in our eyes that have a protein called melanopsin, which was discovered in part by Sachin Panda, who's down at the Salk Institute in La Jolla, California, who I've become friends with, and I've had him on my podcast a bunch of times. And these proteins they're not super sensitive. So, for example, like if your brain registered that it was daytime with exposure to a bright moon, right, the light from the moon, that would have disturbed our circadian rhythm way prior to the advent of artificial lights, right? Campfire, for example. Campfire doesn't perturb your natural circadian clock, but the ambient light from the sun is strong enough to do that. And it doesn't have to be a super bright day. It can be, there can be cloud cover. You don't have to look at the sun, just like opening up a window. And what that does is it basically like flips the switch for those melanopsin proteins. And that communicates with this like really primordial region of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which then interfaces with every organ system in the body to be on time, essentially, like a German train. in accordance with all of its very many functions throughout the day. So like we're meant to eat generally like during the day. We're not nocturnal, we're diurnal. And so, first thing in the morning, that's when like peristalsis kicks up, like the transit of contents through our stomach, right? That's why most people tend to go to the bathroom in the morning, right? Our metabolism is firing on all cylinders during the day, because during the day is when we're meant to be most active because we have light, right? So it's like when our ancestors would have foraged, when we would have gotten stuff done, right? As hunter-gatherers, not during the night.
So if you had to describe the habit in a best practice,
Yeah.
what would that look like?
As soon as you can after waking, you want to expose your eyes to bright light.
For how long?
Well, it's cumulative. So if you just go to the window and you open up your blinds and you just like look outside for 10, 20, 30 seconds, I mean, that is enough. That's enough to like wake you up.
And through the glass, it's all good?
Through the glass, it's all good.
Why did I hear that through the glass is no bueno? Like the glass deters the effect.
I think there's a lot of misinformation on social media with this, with topics that are as complex as this. But it's like, we know that our circadian rhythms can be perturbed by exposure to bright light from our devices, right? When they're like flush up against our faces and like big screen TVs and the like, and through like artificial lights, which come from light bulbs, which have to pass through the glass of the bulb, right? So for us to recognize that, but then not think that we're getting adequate light through our windows doesn't make any sense from the standpoint of logic, right? So yeah, it's as long as it's like sufficiently bright, that's the primary variable. And then that you're getting like the full spectrum and that there's like that short wavelength blue light coming through as well.
And so does that fit into your daily routine? Do you do that pretty much every day to make sure that that's like a priority?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a commute. I work from home. And so when I wake up in the morning, I open up my blinds and it floods my room with light. And I don't have like direct exposure to the sun, but it's just like the ambient light of the day is bright enough to essentially, anchor, so to speak, my circadian rhythm. And then I try to, in the morning, do as many things as I can with exposure to either windows or, like my morning routine. Usually these days I actually walk to a local coffee shop and I get like a iced coffee or something. And so like that, it's all cumulative. So it's like that 30 to 45 second like light exposure immediately upon waking, and then the 5-minute walk to the local coffee shop. Like that's all totally sufficient. And you don't have to go nuts about it, The one caveat I'll add is if you're like in your car driving to work, you want to make sure that you're not wearing sunglasses. And if you can, keep your windows open because, the cover of the roof generally tends to like make it a bit dimmer in the car than it would be like in a room with an open window. But yeah, I try to like, because it also affects your sleep like that night. Mm-hmm. So if you want your sleep to be good, we have to recognize that good sleep hygiene actually begins in the morning. And this is all like part of that equation.
Morning routine is such a big part of my life. Like I have adopted all the things. I just have. That is certainly not for everyone. I don't think it's like my morning routine is important that everybody takes note of and fucking does.
Yeah.
I do it because I genuinely appreciate it and love it. Like it's a long process that I do every morning before my family gets up, and I love doing it. I just love doing it. A lot of people, specifically now more so than like, as all these things were happening over the last 3 years, infrared and red light and fucking sauna and cold plunge and journaling and meditating, like all of it. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Right. I think, for a guy like me who is like a structure maniac, I just am. I need to like, for some reason, I really do just enjoy that stuff. However, I do not think that is necessary. Yeah. I just don't. I really don't. And like, if I don't feel like doing it, I won't.
Yeah.
But I would say 4 to 7 days a week, I do. Because the truth is that stacking those habits in the morning really do make me feel like impenetrable throughout the day. Can you just walk us through what your morning routine looks like, and if you've either enhanced it or diminished it over the last 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, but you bring up a really important point that I feel like there are a lot of people in the health and wellness, fitness, ancestral nutrition space that like to make it seem as though you have to do 1,500 things every day to be healthy. And that's just not true. So you can't, I mean, we always like to say you can't major in the minors. And that's why, like, when it comes to like a really specific like number, prescription in terms of like how much time you should spend outside with the exact amount of lux that you need to get in through your eyes, like, I think that's just like splitting hairs, you know? I mean, as long as you're like spending some time as soon as you wake up, like around a window, you know, like, I think that's fairly sufficient. And then, you know, exercise, all the things that we always talk about, exercise, like make sure that your sleep is good, eat a healthful diet. I mean, it's like, you can obviously get more granular the more obsessive you want to be about these things. And like, I know like people like me, I'm sure a lot of your listeners are like happy to be obsessive about this stuff because we're passionate about it. But for your average person, I also think it's really important to like talk about the low hanging fruit.
Like what? Give us a low hanging fruit.
Yeah. I mean, like for me, from a dietary standpoint, I mean, the more I learn, the less inclined I am to want to like even talk about single nutrients, like both from a potential harm standpoint and also from a like benefit standpoint. As long as you're minimizing your consumption of ultra processed foods, like
that's the dark zone. And if you can stay away from the darkness, you're good.
Yeah. And even within that, you know, there are some ultra processed foods that are not terrible, right? Like whey protein in a way is I wouldn't necessarily call it an ultra processed food, but it's not something that most people are going to be able to make in their kitchens. But generally, like most of the, like, you know, the diet that your average person today is consuming is by and large shelf stable, packaged, ultra processed foods that are nutrient depleted, minimally satiating, highly calorie dense. And so if you can minimize your consumption of those and like shop around the perimeter of the supermarket and base your diet around whole foods, I don't care if you lean more plant-based, I don't care if you lean more carnivore, low carb, high carb, like, I mean, the diet wars on social media are just exhausting. And like, there's a certain point where, you know, I get like just like burnt out from it, you know? And I think like most people just like minimize the ultra processed foods.
And there's legit like wars going on right now. There are people that are out there truly trying to sabotage those who eat meat.
Yeah.
Specifically.
I try not to engage. I mean, I see the missiles flying overhead, like from my vantage point, but every time I go on a podcast, you know, no matter what, like I get like haters because nutrition is like such a tribalistic thing. You know, I advocate for a diet that I'm unapologetic in the fact that like I think meat can be extremely healthy and plants can be extremely healthy. And like the optimal diet in my view is an omnivorous diet, right? Like that's not rocket science and that's a very middle of the road stance to take, but these days, when you say something like that, you're pissing off everybody, right? You're pissing off like the carnivores, you're pissing off the vegans.
You know what's interesting? So I have heart disease all over my family. My father had 2 major heart attacks and 7 smaller heart attacks before he died at a young age. And he was a juvenile diabetic and he had a bunch of other things going on, or I guess they would call it a type 1 diabetic now. Both my father and my grandfather had pacemakers. My mother's side of the family, heart disease everywhere. So obviously, I'm concerned. You know, I'm in my early 40s, and the way I live my life, I shouldn't be concerned based on my exercise commitment and my nutrition commitment. However, I've been told that like I need to just be mindful of it. So I recently did something with Wild Health. You know, I did the Wild Health thing, and I got my DNA back, and they suggested that I do a calcium CT scan. I was terrified. You know what I'm saying? I was fucking really scared.
I can imagine.
Now, I eat, and this is something that I'm unabashedly like down to talk about. I eat red meat, bison, venison that I harvest on myself, lean beef, grass-fed, grass-finished, 3 days, 4 days a week. I really do believe in high quality meat, red meat. But of course, when I'm told, okay, man, you're 42 years old, it's time to go get a CT scan on your heart. You know, your dad, your mom, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm scared. I got my CT calcium scan, and I saw the doctor's number in my phone like 3 or 4 days after I got the scan. And I'm scared at this point. I wasn't really nervous about it, but when I saw the number, I was like, okay, I'm ready for it. I'm scared. And they told me that I had 0 calcium in any artery in my heart, that I have a heart of like a 18-year-old.
Amazing.
And it was one of the most amazing feelings, knowing that like the stuff that we talk about often in the world of health and wellness it really works, because by normal standards, I should have calcium and stuff in my heart based on the genetics in my family. But I take really good care of myself, and I've been able to break the chain.
I love that.
And like, so this, I'm not saying for everyone, but the things that we hear about, like meat and cholesterol and, like for years and years and years, I could just say that from my experience, my personal experience, I'm not a doctor. I'm not talking about anybody else's experience, but I'm telling you from my personal experience, I eat red meat 3 to 4 days a week, great quality red meat. I exercise a lot. I eat predominantly vegetables and complex carbohydrates, and I don't overthink it. I just don't, man. So like if there was like 5 things that you consistently eat in your diet, like what are they? Or in your like if you were to open up Max Lugavere's fridge, what would be in there regularly?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of red meat. I mean, I eat like lean red meat. Like I think it's interesting, like the dogma for the past few decades where it's been fat is bad, fat makes you fat, saturated fat is clogging your arteries. Like it's led to the pendulum swinging in the other direction, where for, a good couple of years, like high fat was in, where it's like, let's just eat all the fatty cuts of meat and like put butter on everything.
Did you do that?
I think I probably did for a little bit. There was probably a window where I was like a little bit more cavalier with like my fat consumption. And to be transparent, like I think we need fat, like fat is good. But I do think that it's like evolutionarily inconsistent to eat excess fatty meat, right? Like wild game, like you talked about bison, you talked about venison. Wild game is like very lean, right? Like a cow is a man-made creation, and a grain-fed cow, after it's come through the factory farm system, it's like it's fattier than like the vast majority of meat any of our ancestors would have consumed at any given time. And so, yeah, I'm of the opinion that red meat is a health food, but like I don't think it should be excessively fatty. So like I buy grass-fed ground beef all the time from the supermarket, and I buy 90 to 93% lean, and that's more than enough fat, like in that package, and I'm happy with it. It tastes great. I'm prioritizing protein. It's super satiating. I know that I'm getting all of the many micronutrients that are found in beef, and I'm benefiting from that. So I'm a huge fan of red meat. And of course, I eat like ribeyes, like on occasion. I love a good ribeye, right? To me, it says a lot that a grass-fed, grass-finished piece of beef is leaner than a grass-fed, grain-finished piece of beef. That says something, like when a cow is fed an aberrant diet, it's fattier. So to me, that very clearly indicates the relative proportion of fats that we're meant to ingest, right? Like it's got a grass-fed, grass-finished cow has less fat, less saturated fat, higher levels of stearic acid, which is neutral from a cardiovascular standpoint, if not healthy. So I'm a huge fan of grass-fed, grass-finished red meat. And then also I think it's important to point out that like, if you can't access grass-fed, grass-finished red meat, just get like leaner beef. Like, I don't like to support the factory farm system because it's horrible in so many ways, but like it's still a very nutrient dense food, especially in the context of the standard American diet, where your average person is consuming 60% by calories, ultra processed foods. So
what's your take on chicken?
I'm a fan. Like chicken breast is great. It's a super lean protein source. I've also been on a bit of like a cutting journey for the past couple of months. So I'm eating a little bit differently than I would normally eat right now. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of chicken.
Are you tracking?
I'm tracking occasionally. I didn't track for the majority of this period. So since January, I've been on like a cutting phase, and I didn't track for the first like 3 months. But I heard somebody say, like nobody guesses their way to 9% body fat, like, So my whole shtick is that you shouldn't. Tracking is a totally great tool, and if tracking works for you and it doesn't create an obsessive relationship with food, then by all means keep doing it. But I think that there's enough data to support my central hypothesis that like you really shouldn't need to track to be at a healthy body weight, when you account for when you really are optimizing for food quality, right? Like if you're eating like perishable fresh foods, like those foods are going to be more satiating, and we see this from data from the NIH, like, and the guys from Mind Pump talk about this all the time. There was a seminal study that showed that like when people consume ultra processed foods, they tend to eat excess calories, when crossed over to like a minimally processed diet, they came in effortlessly at like a calorie deficit. So food quality dictates food quantity, and so for the first couple of months of my cut where I saw the most progress, I wasn't tracking. And what I did was I basically just like I dropped the primary macronutrient that I cut was actually dietary fat. And the reason for that is that, so it wasn't a low fat diet. You need fat. You need fat to absorb fat soluble vitamins. You need fat to optimize your hormones, and you need fat to also prevent gallstones. So fat is not bad, but it's very calorie dense, obviously. So the first thing I did was I cut out like the excess, I cut out all of the added fats, so the oils, and I swapped a lot of the dairy that I was eating for low fat or fat free dairy. And so right off the bat, I mean, when you're optimizing for satiety and you're cutting out those super dense sources of calories, you realize that a tablespoon of oil has the same amount of calories as a whole apple, and the apple is way more satiating than the tablespoon of oil.
It's crazy how many calories a tablespoon of oil has.
Same
140 calories.
Yeah. And I didn't cut my carbs too much because I think most people would like look at me and my work and be like, oh, so did you do like a low carb diet? But I didn't, because we know that the best way to keep your muscle when you're cutting is you got to have great workouts. You got to like keep going to the gym and working out intensely. Don't assume that you're going to get weaker. And so carbs are what fuel your workouts, right? So to me, it was just very clear that like if I want to like lose some body fat, I got to cut some dietary fat. And that's what I did. And for the first 3 months, like it just like melted off.
Yeah, I also think that, from my experience in the bodybuilding arena, like, if you're trying to figure out a way to decrease, because at the end of the day too, it is a calorie thing, right? Like yeah. I mean, I know that there's a lot of controversy on calorie in, calorie out, right? There is. And I don't even think we should get into that. But at the end of the day, right? Like a gram of fat is 9 calories in comparison to a gram of protein or carbohydrate, which is 4 calories. It's literally more than double the amount of calories per gram. So it's a lot, right? So yeah. if you cut 10 grams of fat, you're like, that's 100 calories a day that you can easily just like whoop, and that's less than a tablespoon of olive oil.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's pretty wild to really think about that. However, I will say that in cutting, like severely cutting for like a bodybuilding show, which 0% of people actually do.
Yeah.
It does come predominantly from carbohydrates and fat. Like when I'm there, yeah. I'm super, super low. Mm. The other thing that I think is important to talk about is the term shredded.
Yeah.
Shredded is like a really, it's a totally misleading term. All right, dudes are like, "Oh, I want to get shredded."
Yeah.
And it's a miserable place to exist.
Yeah. First of all, you look small in clothing. You don't feel your best. I want to be super clear. First of all, this is not my area of expertise, so I'm learning on the go, and I'm not a bodybuilder. But I've learned a lot. And the other thing is, you're totally right. And for me, this wasn't about, I didn't want to lose body fat it wasn't a health goal. Like I was already healthy at 15% body fat. Like for a man to be anywhere between 10 and 20% body fat, like you're good, It was literally just like a mental challenge that I gave myself to see if I could do it, because I've never been anywhere, I don't think even near 10% body fat.
Well, you look awesome.
Thanks, man. But I feel better with a little bit more with more body fat. And I think this is probably like an experiment that's going to run for another like 2 weeks or so. And then I'll go back to my normal way of eating, which is like, higher fat and whatever, less focused on calories and all that stuff.
I think tracking macros, you mentioned earlier, tracking, if you become obsessed, if you're an obsessive person, it's not a good thing, right?
No.
I agree. However, anybody who tracks macros is obsessed.
Right.
So like there's a difference between setting a goal, like having a real goal and being like, okay, well, in order to hit this goal, I need to know what I'm putting in the tank.
Yeah.
Like I need to know what I'm putting in the tank. And it's so interesting for me to go from bodybuilding, which for me was awesome and fun, but I was totally obsessed, like 100% I was obsessed, to now go from bodybuilding, which is like eating for aesthetic, to CrossFit, which I'm doing now, and hopefully starting a new career in that fun sport that I love, eating for performance, which is like, could not be more different.
Yeah.
Could not be more different. Like if I ate the way I was eating for bodybuilding, for CrossFit, there'd be no shot. I'd have no shot. And I have to be comfortable at 15 to 16% body fat, like I'm not there yet. Like I'm still battling to get there. Cause like, it's like, it's a mental thing to be able to, at my height, if I want to be competitive, I need to be 185 to 190 pounds to be able to lift the weight in order to compete with the guys that are my age, my size.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I mean, my background is really nutrition for longevity, and I'm a big food quality person, and I never track, and tracking is like not part of like my DNA, I feel like. And so like I've been able to like lift and maintain like a lean, I mean, you're still lean at 15%, like, and 16% to like, like I've just focusing on really satiating high quality foods. I've always prioritized protein, and I've never tracked protein, but I have always in my head kept a running estimate of how much protein I've eaten over the course of the day. Like that's just generally like, and it's to be honest, it's not even a number. It's like, am I prioritizing protein at every meal? And I snack on protein, and like I generally I focus on protein, right? So it's just been like a really interesting like flip of the switch for me, like to kind of like toggle my nutrition in a different way, and then I think like after I do this for myself, just to like have so that I could speak to it, and so that in my back pocket I know that I'll always have this skill. I'm gonna go back to my like normal way of eating where I don't track anything.
You know what I think is kind of fun to mention for anyone listening. If you've never tracked before, I don't think tracking is a sustainable way to live. Well, actually, I should reframe that. It's not a sustainable way to live your life comfortably. It's not a comfortable way to live at fucking weighing out every single thing you eat. It's just not, right? It's like it's really annoying for everybody that's around you. It becomes obsessive and honestly develops like disorders. However, I will say that tracking for a month, like challenging yourself to say, you know what, I'm going to try this for a month, tracking for a month. And then at the end of that month, you stop. The cool thing about it is you learn so much. Like we all think we know how much we're eating, right? And then when actually the rubber meets the road and you're like, all right, I'm going to just continue doing what I'm doing, except I'm going to track it now.
Yeah.
Like you learn a lot. The cool thing about doing that as well is that like you can also like now I don't track anymore. I hope to never track again. Not that I have anything against it. It's just I did it for so long, and it was like it became a problem for me. Like breaking away from it was almost harder than breaking into it.
Interesting.
And so, but what I will say now is that like I know what 5 ounces of protein is. I know exactly what 6 ounces of broccoli, asparagus, and zucchini looks like.
Yeah, you got to get really granular when you're like an actual bodybuilder.
Yeah, but like the cool thing is if you challenge yourself to do it for a month, it actually will teach you a lot, and it's a month of a self-educational experiment.
Yes,
that is really cool. And so like sitting down to eat a 12-ounce piece of steak is like totally unnecessary, right? On a regular basis. And most restaurants will like the steak is like 10 to 12 ounces.
Oh man. I'm getting hungry.
But like, it's just, you don't need it, right? You don't need it. It's like 5 ounces of chicken breast is like 48 grams of protein.
Yeah, you're right.
And if you eat an 8 or 10 ounce chicken breast, like one of the big mamas, which a lot of people are just like, oh, it's chicken breast, you just inhaled 100 grams of protein.
Yeah.
50 grams is going to actually get like utilized, and then 50 grams is metabolized as sugar and be stored as fat pretty much, you know? And so, and I could be wrong there. You're this expert on that, but like, isn't that like something to be mindful of?
Well, I think ultimately, as long as there's no benefit to consuming more than say 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So, I mean, if you're consuming, if you like me, you know, started at 190 pounds and are consuming 300 grams of protein every day, there's no point in doing that. You should probably be getting more carbs to fuel your workouts and more, you know, like where are your carbs and fats coming from, you know? Generally, like, you know, but also this idea that like your body's not going to utilize protein if you consume too much of it at one meal, that's something that I don't think is really a viable concern, because like, first of all, you digest food slowly, you know, more slowly. So those you'll get like, you know, it's not like a chicken breast and, for example, whey protein digests at the same rate, right? Like you're going to be digesting that over a period of time. You know, gluconeogenesis is like a demand-driven process. So if you're eating carbs, like I wouldn't be too concerned about the liver like creating carbohydrate or creating sugar rather from that protein. But no, I mean, yeah, you just generally like the recommendation is 0.72 to about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight is like the optimal range. You don't want to go too far below 0.7 if you're a weight training individual. It's more accurate to speak in terms of kilograms, even though we don't use kilograms as much in the United States. It's 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight is the general, like what you see in the literature, you know, as the range for like optimal protein intake.
I want to shift gears a little bit and get into some routine stuff.
Yeah.
You breezed by your morning routine, but can you just walk us through your morning routine?
Yeah. So, I mean, I wake up, I drink some water. I drink like spring water, you know, I get like delivered to my house, like this Mountain Valley spring water, which no affiliation, but like it's got electrolytes in it. And then generally after that, I mean, I think like my routine lately has been I walk to a local coffee shop. So it achieves 3 things for me. 1, it allows me to get outside soon after waking up for that bright ambient light. 2, I get some steps in and just some general movement, which is good for digestion, you know, at a time of day when peristalsis is really firing up. And then 3, I get that coffee, which I know, you know, there's a lot of benefits to consuming coffee. It's one of the top sources of polyphenols. It's allegedly or apparently rather great for your cardiovascular system, great for neurological health, which is important to me. And so, yeah, so I'm a huge fan of coffee. And so, yeah, so that's like, you know, the first thing I do. And then generally my coffee, these days I drink it black, but under most circumstances, I'll put some heavy cream in it, which to me, it's like you're adding a little bit of fat. You are slowing down the absorption of caffeine, which, you know, when you drink black coffee on an empty stomach, it's like it can make you more prone to jitters and the like, just because it's like so quickly absorbed. So adding some fat slows down what's called gastric emptying. So generally I'll put some heavy cream in there. And it's also, you know, heavy cream increases the bioavailability of coffee polyphenols, because polyphenols are fat soluble, and typically polyphenols are pretty poorly absorbed. But you do to some degree increase like bioavailability when you consume coffee.
How much cream do you put in?
I do like a tablespoon, which is like about 100 calories worth of fat, I think, roughly somewhere in that ballpark. And heavy cream is a great source of vitamin K2. So in its own right, for a fat, it's a pretty nutrient dense fat. You've got like vitamin A, you've got vitamin K2. Yeah, so I'm a huge fan. And then I generally will wait an hour after I wake up to like eat, food. And part of the reason why I do that is I think there is a circadian like rationale. For the first half an hour to 45 minutes after waking, your cortisol pattern is like, your cortisol is the highest that it's going to be throughout the day. And so what cortisol does is it's like liberating stored fuels. So you're like using some of that stored sugar in your liver, you're oxidizing fat, which, ultimately fat loss is about energy balance, but cortisol is like the body's chief catabolic hormone. So you're just like liberating all these like stored fuels so that you can get up and seize the day. And so after that kind of subsides, then actually I start to get a little hungry. And also I think consistent meal times is fairly important as well. And that's when I'll generally eat something unless I'm doing like a fasted workout. But these days, as I mentioned, I'm enjoying like pre-workout carbs. So, whether it's like Creatures of Habit, meal one, or like a scramble, I love to eat eggs in the morning. Generally like that's when I'll break my fast with like a small meal, getting a good bolus of protein, moderate source of slow burning carbohydrates. And then soon after that, I'll head to the gym. And that's when I work out, I just find that like midday workouts, I work out midday, sometimes, but like when I'm like digesting like bigger meals and I just don't feel as like limber, so I really like to like hit it first thing in the morning.
Are you doing strength training or a mix of strength and cardio?
Primarily strength training. Yeah. I do like strength training and I will like walk on the treadmill. I think walking is amazing. I hate running. Every once in a while I'll get like I'll have like a spurt where I'll like start running, but generally like it doesn't feel great like in my body to run. Like I've got like low back issues and just the impact, it's just not something that I've ever really been able to like sustain. But walking to me is amazing. It's like super low impact. The reward to agony ratio with walking is amazing. With running you get high reward, but the agony is like also way higher. So the ratio, like the reward to agony ratio with walking to me is like through the roof. You're doing all that. You're burning fat. You're, moving lymph fluid around your body. You're using sugar in your blood. You're reducing triglycerides. There's like so much. It's totally sustainable. You can do it for a long time. It's a great opportunity to listen to podcasts.
Do you walk at an incline or just flat?
Yeah. I put it typically at like anywhere between like 4 and 6. And I'll walk for like at like a setting of 3.2. Sometimes I'll bring it up to like 3.5, but I don't kill myself. That's the whole point, is like it's sustainable. It's got to be sustainable.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like that zone 2 training, which I think there's research coming out on the benefits of that.
That's all the cardio I did in bodybuilding.
Just walking?
Period.
Yeah.
Uphill walking. That's it.
Well, and the other thing about cardio when you're cutting, like which I've been doing, is I feel so cool. I feel like one of the boys when I say that I'm cutting, but no, I'm gonna, I definitely like I want to like put on some mass like after I get done with this phase. But the thing about you really want to like train intensely, and if you're doing like hardcore cardio, you're just depleting your energy, like, which is in limited supply anyway, like during a cutting phase. Much better off putting that towards strength training and then just freaking walking, like it's so easy. And like,
it's so funny. Yesterday or 2 days ago, I posted about, someone had asked me, about cardio before or after training. And I just very, very definitively said, I would never do cardio before training.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make, if strength training or resistance training is part of your, like if that is what you're doing, cardio is only going to like potentially support some fat loss and movement, right? Like general movement.
Yeah.
But if you are doing strength training, that should be you should be putting every ounce of energy towards that, because that is just consistently proven to be one of the greatest things that we can do as we get older, right? Strength training for muscle development, bone density, all those things, right?
Yep.
It's sustainable if you don't like absolutely kill yourself every single time you do it. Like it's something that you can do for a very long time.
Yeah.
And so, and the amount of shit I got from people being like, oh, it's totally personal, and the truth is that like if you were to go into the gym and have a leg day, but start your leg day with a 30-minute Stairmaster, it would just completely detract minimum 25 to 30% from the energies you could be putting towards your leg day.
100%. I mean, I get like a 5-minute warm up, maybe, you know, but like, yeah, to kill yourself on cardio and then to fool yourself into thinking you're going to be able to go and put as much into your weight training as you would without the cardio, I think that's probably delusional, you know, like that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, resistance training is amazing. There was a new meta-analysis that came out that found that resistance training is very effective for also reducing hypertension, which is like high blood pressure, which, you know, most of the time we think about aerobic, like cardio, right? For that purpose. But they found that moderate to vigorous weight training twice a week for people with hypertension, it's like medicine, you know, can help bring your blood pressure down. I mean, we know that like it goes up when you work out. Same with inflammation, right? Like it goes up, but then ultimately like it brings your baseline down. And so yeah, I mean, resistance training to me is like, it's crucially important.
You know, there's so few things available to human beings that can benefit both mental and physical in such a significant way.
Yeah.
Doing one thing and have equal outcome ramifications for both your mental and physical health. It's like, it's so hard to find some things that that can actually generate that kind of outcome, you know?
Yeah. That do so, because that's the amazing thing about exercise is like, it works all of these different pathways, you know, like every single pathway that there is like in the body, like it strengthens all of them. It's like the tide that lifts all the boats. Compare that to like a drug, you know, like a monotherapy molecule that you might get from your pharmacy that like works on one pathway that we've identified, you know. Exercise strengthens the entirety of the system. That's why it's so good for you. It's like medicine.
Well, I think, you know, when you really sort of peel back the onion, we were designed to exercise, period, right?
Yeah.
Like for 100,000 years, anything that we wanted in life had to be done manually. If, you know, however long we've been standing on 2 feet, like only in the last, you know, 150 years has things been handed to us on a platter. Everything else was sort of like you had to work for it, you had to move for it. You wanted food, you had to garden for it. You had to harvest it. You wanted to communicate with somebody that lived, you know, like in a mile away. Like the only way to get there was to walk, you know, or run. You know, all these things. So like prime, like our primal instinct is to move, and I also believe that is why movement is so rewarding. Because inherently that is like accomplishment for so many thousands of years for us, right? Like you spent a day building something or hunting or harvesting or whatever it was. That was like, that's the win. Like it's not the fancy car, it's not the house, it's not like the accolade, it's like no. Like I movement was money.
Yeah.
Know?
And it's like a major, like when you have that relationship with fitness, when it's your lifestyle, it's a major like anchor point in your life that benefits all of like every other area in your life benefits when you have that as like the foundation, you know? I mean, some people might say also having like a spiritual foundation, like all that stuff is great. But like for me, it's really been like exercise, like, you know, the fact that like, I'm just so, it's always been there for me whenever I've had periods of self-doubt, or when I've had anxiety about life or work, or when I've been depressed. I've always had that. And I feel very lucky. I feel very like blessed in a way. I'm not a religious person, but that I've been able to that I was able to identify the benefits that I received from exercise so early on, and that it's been such a mainstay in my life for so many years. It really is. Like, I love it. I've been like obsessed with lifting. I wish I had better genetics, to be honest, because like I feel like, you know, I'd be stronger or whatever, or I maybe, you know, could have actually been like. It's probably a good thing that I didn't make it a profession, but no, I've just always like loved it, you know, and yeah, and it benefits. It has like this spillover effect where, you know, it lifts my confidence in every other area of life.
So if you had to advise someone who was listening to this podcast and kind of lost, would you say that movement's probably the first thing that they should, or some sort of exercise is the first thing that they should delve into?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, don't feel like you have to like bite off more than you can chew and sign up for a gym, you know, membership and like go balls to the wall overnight. 'Cause that's generally like, you know, you're not going to be able to sustain that. And it's really important to build a solid aerobic base and to learn the practice of weightlifting. Like, you know, I've been doing this for, I mean, now it's been like 20 something years, if not more. And I'm still like learning, like to do, like, I'm still tweaking my form in moves that I've been doing for 20 years and like, and continually establishing like a better mind muscle connection. So, I mean, you're like always learning, but you don't want to injure yourself. So, I mean, you do want to take the time to make sure that you're not just like diving head first without doing the appropriate due diligence. And yeah, I think movement is a great starting place. Like just walking a little bit more, you know, for some people that are, that feel hopeless, like just taking a daily walk around the block is like a big hurdle.
Huge.
Yeah. But a beneficial one.
There's a documentary that I saw that I truly loved. Like, I think it was one of the better documentaries in a long time, but Jonah Hill did a documentary called Stutz.
Oh, so good.
Dude. And the coolest thing about it is I've been talking about this for so long, right? Like, if you feel lost, if you feel like there's, you know, total like uncertainty is like eating at your soul, look inside in terms of like go back to the basics, like start moving because you can find enormous gratitude and you can find absolute wins completely in your control by just incorporating movement like on a regular basis into your life. It saved my life, movement, 100%. When I got sober, I was introduced to fitness or reintroduced to fitness. You know, I was an athlete as a kid, but like when I got sober, these two guys really took me under their wing. They walked me over to a Muay Thai kickboxing gym and they were like, this is what you're going to do now. And it saved my life.
Wow.
Like full blown. And so I'm so passionate about, you know, nutrition obviously is super important in longevity and health and performance. And, you know, if you have goals aesthetically, lose weight, whatever. But I will say that like, I think a life without movement, if you are listening to this podcast and you are not exercising in some way, like you said, it could be a fucking walk around the block. It could be a mile run. It could be, you know, sitting on a stationary bike. Like any kind of movement is going to activate confidence in some way, shape, or form.
Definitely.
And confidence is ultimately going to equate to happiness.
Yeah. And I think taking the time to learn about fitness, I mean, is really important. Like, you know, a lot of people like they'll go to the gym and I see this in my own gym. I see people who I just like internally, I try not to be judgmental, but like, you know, every day they're just doing curls and their form is like really terrible and they're swinging their arms up, you know, and there's less of an excuse today than there has been in the past to just go blindly into a fitness kind of environment and to not equip yourself with the knowledge because the knowledge is out there. You know, it's like we live in a time where the most important conversations of our time are happening on podcasts and YouTube. I mean, there are so many brilliant people on YouTube, like evidence-based fitness practitioners who are just like pouring out free knowledge. And I think it's an incredible time for agency, for self-empowerment. And and that's, what I've obviously dedicated my life to. I wouldn't consider myself like one of like a fitness educator necessarily, but yeah, I mean, like there's no time like the present to arm yourself with knowledge and then to act on that knowledge.
What does your evening routine look like, your wind down routine?
Well, I try to stop eating for 2 to 3 hours before I go to sleep. And so like in a perfect world for me, I'm cooking my own food and I'm making something really healthy for myself. And I'm maybe watching a show that I really like, that's stimulating, that creatively gets my gears turning. But also that sometimes doesn't jive with social obligations. And I think we have to prioritize social connection, right? Like I spend a lot of time with my brothers, who I'm very lucky to live near me, or my friends. And so, an equally perfect evening for me is going out to dinner with like friends and socializing. We know that there's that social connection is another form of medicine, and that conversely social isolation is essentially a toxin, as bad as smoking cigarettes.
Worse, no?
Yeah. I mean, there was this like this longitudinal Harvard study that I think it's like ongoing for 80 years now, where they found
longest human study.
The longest human study. Yeah. I had the guy, one of the researchers on that study now, Robert Waldinger, on my show, and I was like blown away.
Incredible.
Yeah. And so you definitely don't want to, that's one of the costs that comes from like becoming so obsessive about fitness and body composition, that you really do end up missing out on all these like important social opportunities. So for me, those are crucially important, and I try to prioritize those as much as I can. And then, yeah, my winding down ritual is I try to minimize my exposure to screens. I have red light bulbs in my house, like in my bedroom, which makes my bedroom look like a strip club at night, which depending on the context, may or may not be fun. But it's actually, that's not why I have red light bulbs in my bedroom. I have them because they don't perturb my brain's natural circadian inclination to wind down and start secreting that nightly melatonin surge. And I try to minimize my exposure to overhead lights, so I keep my house really dark at night. If I'm feeling really nerdy, I'll put on some like blue blocking glasses while I watch TV or something, which I don't always do, but
the red lens glasses.
Yeah. Just to kind of reduce some of the, like I have a massive TV. I'm a film buff too. Like I'm a cinemaphile. So when I want to watch a movie, like I'm not wearing those glasses. And generally, like I have a home theater system, like a huge TV, and so that's a lot of light, So if I'm not watching something that I absolutely love, I'll put on the blue blockers, and yeah, so that helps me like get sleepy. I try to keep my bedroom really cool and dark. I don't have blackout shades, and my bedroom actually doesn't often get as cool as I would like it to be, because I don't have like an AC unit for my bedroom, so it's not ideal, but we can't let perfect be the enemy of the good, and so but I try to keep my bedroom cool. I try not to like spend any time that I don't have to. I don't work from bed. I try to practice good sleep hygiene. And I have one of these like mattress cooling things that I set to be relatively cold, so that, because we know that like one of the things that your body does to wind down is it drops temperature. And then that's pretty much it. Then I go to bed. And
sleep mask?
I don't have a sleep, or I have one, but I don't use it. But I don't need to, because I sleep with I'm kind of a weird sleeper. I put because I have low back issues, I create like a sleep fort for myself. So I know I sound like I'm 12.
No, this is you didn't say this. This is important. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So I sleep I've got 2 king size pillows. So they're long pillows that flank me on both sides, and I kind of like tuck them under my hips, because I sleep on my stomach. So it helps to elevate my hips, which makes my low back feel good. And then I sleep, obviously I have like my head on a pillow, and then I sleep with another pillow on top of my head.
Do you have a pillow that you love?
I just like, I get like medium firmness, like down pillows. It's not, they're for me pretty interchangeable, but they've got to be firm enough so that it stays on my head, but doesn't sink into my, like where I create this little space so that I can breathe. So Yeah, so I've got one pillow underneath my head, one pillow on top of my head, two pillows on my side, and then I've got another pillow right next to my head that my cat sleeps on.
So I had the founder of Therabody on the podcast a couple of 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
And he also has a sleep fort set up that he mentioned 5 pillows. He sets his pillows up before he gets into his bed, and you're the second person to say the sleep fort.
Really?
Oh yeah. And coming from you and Jason, I'm kind of all right, these guys are in the know, they've got, this is something to pay. This is potentially a new business.
I don't know, man. Could be why I'm perennially single as well. But I sleep really well.
I also recently had I did a real pillow challenge, and I just posted, and I didn't know that pillow companies have not done a good job at injecting themselves into the world of wellness. There's not a single pillow company that has been this is the pillow, because pillow is so important to me for sleep. And so I really wanted to know what was the best pillow. So I just posted randomly, hey, anybody got any pillow recommendations? I'm going to buy some new pillows. I'm trying to find some new pillows. And I'm telling you, the amount of activity that I got on that story post was unbelievable.
Wow.
And 5 pillow companies sent me pillows to try.
Amazing.
And I tried them all, and they were all good.
What did you find out?
Well, I found out that I thought I was a side sleeper until I started paying attention to my sleeping, and I found out that I am a stomach sleeper, that I move around a lot in my sleep, but I traditionally will start on my stomach and end on my stomach, and then sometimes I'll find myself on my back or on my side, but I think the majority of the time I'm sleeping, I'm on my stomach. And I loved a pillow company called Pillow Cube sent me a pillow that is specifically for side sleepers. So if you are a side sleeper, I highly recommend that pillow, because it's a really cool idea, and what they're doing really works. And a really amazing pro athlete that I'm friendly with, Kelsey Keel. She's a CrossFit athlete. She also highly recommended Pillow Cube, and they also make this square pillow that I love, that I do use pretty regularly, that you put between your knees. And so it actually, for my lower back, it really does make a difference, because I have a very bad lower back as well. In terms of general pillow, what I found was there were 2 pillow companies that I loved, Coop Home Pillows and Pluto Pillows. Both of them were very, very good. I prefer the Coop because they actually send you extra stuffing with your pillow. And they have a guide to tell you exactly, if you're a side sleeper, back sleeper, or whatever, they tell you exactly how much to take in and put out.
Wow.
So the pillow game is a real thing, and I love the fact that I'm gonna try the pillow fort. I'm gonna try the pillow fort.
Well, because you're also a stomach sleeper like me, and for me, it really helps my low back to prop my hips up a little bit. So I kind of push them both to be under my, I don't know what these bones are called, but my hip bones.
Yeah.
And just to prop myself up a little bit there. And I sleep like a baby. I sleep great.
I just want to ask you a few last questions about habits. Cold exposure, is that something that you think is a flash in the pan fad, or do you actually like it?
I enjoy it. It's so funny because these fads, it's like wildfire on the internet, where I feel like cliche now talking about it, but I've been doing this for years. And I do it because of what it does for I do it because I feel like it helps my low back, the inflammation or whatever that I have in my low back occasionally. And then primarily I do it because of what it does to my brain. I feel like the mental acuity boost that I get from it, it's like a state change. If I'm depressed, if I'm anxious, I do, either a cold shower or a cold plunge. And it just makes my brain feel like I'm hitting the reset button.
Infrared sauna.
Infrared sauna I really like, but I prefer hot Finnish sauna, traditional sauna. I think I'm Scandinavian in a past life, because I just love really hot sauna.
And scientifically, is there do you think that there's a significant difference between that super, super duper hot sauna that gets up to 210 degrees, like a barrel sauna, or infrared?
I think that there's probably overlapping benefits, and then there are probably benefits that are distinct to both modalities, you know. But observationally, the research, like a lot of the research on saunas and health outcomes, comes out of the University of Eastern Finland. And in Finland, where they do this research, they only use one kind of sauna. They use traditional hot sauna. And so we can't extrapolate from those studies the benefits that one might incur from regularly doing an infrared sauna. I think there probably are some conserved benefits, you know, like you're sweating, you're elevating your heart rate in an infrared sauna. But yeah, I mean, just because we have like more data on the actual like hot type, that's generally like my preference. And I like the intensity of like really hot sauna.
What about red light therapy?
That's the one where I'm like the most skeptical, but I did speak to, first of all, there is some good science on it. You know, I saw one study that was like low back pain. It wasn't a perfect study, but like, you know, because it's hard to create like a sham condition, they call it, like a, you know, like a fake red light condition. Like you kind of know if you're putting red light on a given body part. So it's kind of hard to do like a control trial in that way. But yeah, that it seemed to be effective in this one small study for low back pain. So I've been, you know, using it on my low back. And I did speak to a researcher about it who like specifically is working on red light photobiomodulation. And, you know, as skeptical as I am, like it seems to be able to penetrate the skin, and it seems to have like all these like mitochondrial boosting effects. Impossible to measure. Definitely a bit of like woo-woo vibes and like faith that you kind of have to go on when you're using it. But I don't know. I mean, I know that whenever I've been like outside shirtless, like during like the part of the day when the sun is kind of low and you're getting those red rays, like I know that makes me feel really good.
Best time of the day.
Best time of the day.
On the beach. Yeah.
Exactly. I know that makes me feel really good.
I love that time of the day.
And we know that there are benefits that we get from the sun that are not just like vitamin D and not just the light exposure for our circadian rhythms. Like we know that the UVA light helps to release nitric oxide under the skin, which is really great for our blood pressure. You know, like we know that the sun actually helps like reduce hypertension. So we know that there are like all these like these other benefits, like this constellation of benefits that we can't just reduce to like vitamin D and whatever, you know? So I remain open-minded, but skeptical, but I do use it. Like I have a Juve device in my house and I use it whenever I can, you know?
First of all, thank you so much for being here. This is a super fun conversation. I honestly think that I could probably talk to you for 7 hours straight.
Likewise, dude. So fun. Thanks for having me.
Of course. You know, the one thing that I just want to say to finish this up, and then I have one last question for you, is that all these things, red light, sauna, cold, meditate, journal, read, write, fucking nutrition, fitness, all of it, supplements, you know, all that stuff. If the pursuit of life for you, me, whoever's listening, is to be just a little bit better, right? Like that is why I do these things, because I genuinely want on a daily basis to show up as a better human being. I really do want to be better. I want to live happy, healthy, and I want to be there for my wife and my kids. I want to be there for my business, my employees, my friends. All these things can potentially help you in that pursuit, right? And so I think we started out the conversation by saying, hey, like there's a lot of shit out there. You definitely don't have to do any of it if it makes you stressed out, if it adds a level of discomfort or stress to your life. But adding a little bit of it with the idea that it's just going to help you potentially be a little bit better is why I created the business that I have today, which is a business about habits. Because I do believe that the decisions that we make on a daily basis will ultimately paint a picture of our happiness. Fuck success. The decisions that we make on a daily basis consistently will paint a picture of whether we feel good or not. And typically those decisions start in the beginning of the day. And you take a little, whoever's listening or the listener, you take a little tidbits of these tiny little things and try to implement them into your life. Try them, right? Like if they work, great. If they don't, great. You know, I do believe that we are posed with questions and decisions all day, every single day. It is the existence of life, right? Nonstop. We say yes or no. And so having these conversations, I think, really is valuable for people.
Couldn't agree more. Life is like a tapas bar, you know, like not everything that arrives to the table is going to be something that interests you or that you're going to enjoy. But I mean, the more things that you can try and expose yourself to, like it's going to broaden your worldview as a sentient, conscious spirit, you know, and exactly as you said, like you don't have to do everything and you shouldn't try to, you know, do everything at once. But I mean, these tools exist and they're there for the taking. So why not?
Why do you do what you do? Why are you so interested in this?
I think love is the answer. I mean, love is the answer to so many things, but for me, it's, I love having these conversations. I love meeting inspiring people such as yourself. I love thinking about nutrition and health and fitness. Like it's just been, you know, it's a love affair that I've had for as long as I can remember, you know, from like my mid-teens. The moment I discovered fitness and health, I just knew that this was going to be a lifelong love affair. That's never let me down, you know, it's always there for me. And ultimately what I do, in many ways was inspired by my mom, who I loved to death, literally. And she was, the latter end of her life was very tragic. She was afflicted by many chronic conditions, health conditions. And it's my hope that with my work and the content that I put out, that I can help others, you know, avert or at least reduce their risk for the conditions that my mom had. I mean, my mom had a form of dementia, and then she ultimately passed from pancreatic cancer, and they were the most tragic, you know, seeing what she went through was tragic and traumatic in every conceivable way. And yeah, so I mean, that's really what motivated me to put my foot forward and start like educating people. And so, yeah, so it's, you know, the love I have for her, the love I have for what it is that I'm doing. And ultimately like the feedback that I get and seeing people implement and respond positively to the, you know, to my work. Like, it's just there's no better feeling.
It's unbelievable. That is an incredible purpose and why. It's an amazing one for the moms. If people want to find you and follow along the journey, very few people I'm sure on this podcast listening don't know who you are, but if they don't, where would they find you?
Thank you. Instagram, I'm very active at Max Lugavere. And then I've got 3 books. My first book was called Genius Foods, and it's a deep dive into nutrition as it pertains to brain health. You know, brain health, mental health. It really is like a nutritional care manual for the brain. And then my most recent book came out. It was called Genius Kitchen Cookbook / wellness guide. So I've got books out, and then my podcast is called The Genius Life, and it's wherever you get your podcasts.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, man. I really, really appreciate it.
Dude, thanks for having me. Let's get this oatmeal going.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Creatures of Habit podcast. I had to, you know, this probably could have gone on for a very, very long time. I've been trying to keep these podcasts down in that 30 to 40 minute mark. For some people, it would be a commute or a walk on the treadmill, but they are creeping up there in time. So I appreciate you being along for the ride. It would mean the world to me if you shared this podcast with a friend, a family member, anyone who you think would appreciate it or get value from this. That would be anyone. Also, if you would do us a huge favor, which helps keep this podcast alive and growing, write a review write a review. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just let us know how this podcast is giving you some light in your life. And if you hate the podcast, you can also write about that. Because I do enjoy constructive criticism. I've learned to love that over the years. A 5-star rating would be the absolute cherry on top. That would be wonderful if you want to take some time to do that. Other than that, I really appreciate you guys. I love you. Hop over to creaturesofhabit.com and check out Meal One. We have a very, very cool new product coming to the market very, very soon that I'm excited to talk about when the time is right. Until then, y'all, peace.